Hanju's eyes, at this moment, became sharp, calm, and cold, seemingly able to see through the three realms without the slightest ripple of emotion or fluctuation. With absolute comprehension of destiny, he silently observed the flow of all things and spoke in a low, internal voice. Under the heavenly Tao, the myriad forms of the world are all within sight. Though I am committed to not interfering in worldly affairs, it does not mean I will neglect the situation. From these observations, he judged the situation concerning the beast race. In fact, no investigation is necessary. Because if the beast race saintist had truly perished, with the temperament of the Black Fox Demon Emperor, he would have caused chaos long ago. But the fact that the human and beast races have coexisted peacefully for many years proves the opposite. The scene shifts to the beast race territory. Countless demon beasts are gathered there, all simultaneously facing one person, the saintist. The seductive voice of the saintist spoke. I was almost killed by my original personality. I underestimated the depth of that man's devotion. Fortunately, there was still some residual power left on Feng Liang's severed arm. Thanks to that, I could regenerate myself and even absorb some of his fortune. Luckily, the original self vanished, and I managed to deceive the beast race elders. She clicked her tongue and stated, Sometimes, the dead are easier to use than the living. Golden light flowed through the sharp claws, and every streak of light, like a thread of destiny, was forcibly pulled to one point. The space trembled slightly, as if heaven and earth were resisting. But it was futile. A smile curved at the corner of her lips, mad and arrogant. The hoarse voice rang out again in the beast territory. With the root of fortune transformed from the arm of the Son of Heaven and Earth, the rise of the beast race is within reach. She continued, The urgent matter now is to rely on this temporary favor from heaven and earth to enhance my strength. The demon beasts, though massive, accepted submission to the saintess. They all worshipped her. Hearing her words, one of them asked a question. What about the next steps? The saintess raised her hand, touching her incomplete face, and smiled proudly. Devouring the flesh of a few great officials under that old man's command should not be a problem for advancing half a step into the great ascension realm. Time flew by. 34 years passed in the blink of an eye. After Feng Liang returned, he widened his eyes and loudly invited San Tojiao to spar a bit. San Tojiao was enjoying a hot bowl of noodles when he was interrupted. He secretly complained, This kid must have suffered an emotional setback and wants to find an outlet for his anger. But then he remembered that Feng Liang had only reached the tribulation transcendence realm. So there was nothing to fear. Thus, San Tojiao bravely accepted the sparring challenge. But instead of a fierce battle of techniques, they ended up playing cards, and San Tojiao immediately dropped 4 twos, shouting, 4 of a kind! San Tojiao lifted the remaining cards, asking his opponent if he would follow, leaving Feng Liang in a difficult position, scratching his head and speechless. The two opponents had different styles, but every game had to end in victory or defeat. While Feng Liang was flustered, San Tojiao was extremely smug about the cards in his hand. He carefully calculated that it was absolutely impossible for a straight flush to exist and that Feng Liang's last card could not beat 4 of a kind plus 2 jokers. In short, no matter how they played, Feng Liang would lose. Just as San Tojiao thought he was about to win big, Feng Liang suddenly laid down his cards and announced, I win! San Tojiao's face crumpled, his eyes almost popped out, and he yelled, questioning why his opponent had won. What struck his eyes now were 5 cards representing the 5 body parts of the powerful god Exodia. Once these parts are fully assembled, that character can be unleashed. Faced with defeat, San Tojiao slumped and dropped his cards, complaining bitterly about his opponent's ridiculously good luck. He declared he wouldn't play anymore. However, San Tojiao suddenly changed his attitude. Surging with competitive spirit, and demanded another round. Meanwhile, high up on the mountain range, Hanju was diligently cultivating by sitting and practicing counting from tens, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, all the way to hundreds of millions. Let's briefly summarize Hanju's information. Realm, reincarnation, profound immortal early stage. Lifespan, 1365/120,045,999. Race, immortal race, homing spiritual body, carrying innate destiny, and a lifespan of up to 120 million years. Alongside this were some basic attributes including talent and charm, peerless, top tier, aptitude and comprehension for sword Dao, top tier, heavenly mandate swordsman, top tier movement technique aptitude, unrivaled movement. After reading the valuable data, Hanju quickly tucked it into his robe, but this secretive action was immediately caught red-handed by Tai Bai. The person suddenly appeared from behind and asked, "Brother Hanju, are you busy with something?" Hanju was startled and quickly turned around to ask, "Brother Tai Bai, why are you here?" At this moment, Tai Bai looked exactly like an unwilling delivery man. He was carrying a large bag of goods, so his expression couldn't be happy. Hearing Hanju's question, he replied, "The peach banquet is about to begin. To prevent the peaches from being entirely devoured, His Majesty told me to bring you four ahead of time." Looking at Tai Bai's laborious appearance, Hanju couldn't help but speculate that Brother Tai Bai's injury from the demonic attack earlier had not yet recovered. Seeing that besides carrying the food, he also had a cup of milk tea in his hand, Hanju seized the opportunity to show concern. He said, "This Japanese milk tea can regulate blood essence and restore immortal power, so Brother Tai Bai should drink a lot." Tai Bai sat down, his expression still unmoving. He slowly said thank you and took the food out of the large bag. He instructed Hanju not to complain about the small amount, as ordinary celestials only received one peach of immortality. Even the Heavenly Empress and most of His Majesty's sons only received one or two. Only an extremely outstanding prince would receive three. Hanju quickly rushed forward, hugging the peaches, and happily replied, "To be allocated even one is an honor. Please thank His Majesty on my behalf, Brother Tai Bai." Seeing Hanju's excited yet courteous demeanor, Tai Bai nodded approvingly. "His Majesty truly did not misjudge you. You know how to be grateful and repay favors." However, before the praise was finished, he added a remark full of hidden meaning. "It's only a pity." Hearing this, Hanju was bewildered and immediately dropped his unrestrained expression to seriously ask what was a pity. Tai Bai crossed his arms, turned his face away, and only then answered, "This time, a heavenly talent from the Divine Palace is attending the peach banquet. The leader is Jianxindi, a man who could prove the Tao and become an immortal emperor at any moment. Though he is not yet considered to be shouldering the entire young generation of the Divine Palace, he is regarded as the #1 sword cultivator." He seemed to dislike this character, regretfully saying that if Hanju had been born 100,000 years earlier, he might have been able to compete and suppress his arrogance at this grand gathering. These words stimulated Hanju's brain to recall the image of Jianxindi, golden immortal realm perfection. The system showed that this character, Jianxindi, had 3 stars of favorability, was the strongest sword Dao genius in the Divine Palace for the past 1 million years. Knowing Hanju's aptitude, he harbored the intention to recruit him. Seeing Hanju's dazed expression, Tai Bai rushed over to reassure him. He told him not to worry, as no one would force him to reveal himself. The heavenly court was not to be trifled with and had many heavenly talents. Even His Highness Lung Shan was not the #1. "I only regret that you missed out on an opportunity." Hanju's expression brightened again upon hearing this, and he smiled, saying, "Thank you." Before leaving, he didn't forget to instruct Hanju to cultivate in peace. But then he suddenly remembered something and stopped. Tai Bai winked and praised that the business in the Crimson Cloud realm was not bad, and His Majesty was very satisfied with him. The 3 words, "Crimson Cloud realm," left Hanju bewildered. Immediately after, he took out his card to check and was surprised to see the number 886 appear, indicating that the ranking had increased again. He discovered he was now ranked 2532. The card also displayed the rankings of other realms. Hanju inwardly exclaimed at how quickly it was rising, suspecting someone was playing tricks, and decided to find someone to ask. The scene shifts to the River of Sword Dao, also known as the Ice Field, where the ground was covered in a thick layer of ice. Hanju struggled to run there and whined. "Old brother!" Zhang Guxing saw him arrive and rushed out to greet him, smiling and saying he came at the right time. He then introduced the person beside him as the young sword cultivator of the Divine Palace. Hanju was also surprised and inwardly thought this person's aptitude was unusual, so establishing a good relationship now would mean having an extra connection later. Immediately after, Hanju clasped his hands and respectfully greeted him, stating his name. The opponent briefly replied with 4 words. "Divine Palace, Zhujian." Zhujian's muscular build and strange attire spurred Hanju's curiosity. He whispered to Zhang Guxing about the long shoulder armor, which the latter explained was a collection box used to store swords, hidden weapons, and snacks, a distinctive feature of the Divine Palace, similar to the Heavenly Court's heavy armor. Hanju found the comparison awkward, but Zhang Guxing laughed heartily and corrected him, saying it symbolized status. The higher the strength, the longer the shoulder armor. Hanju helplessly retorted that if that were the case, the leader of the Divine Palace must wear something incredibly long, right? The old man innocently replied that it was used to raise birds and was almost becoming an ecosystem. Looking at the person in front of him, Hanju was inwardly glad he hadn't joined the Divine Palace. But seeing that only the two of them had been talking without giving Zhujian a chance to speak, Zhang Guxing had to prompt him to say something. Hanju looked at him, secretly regretting that no favorability rating was displayed, but the atmosphere was only submerged in awkward silence until Zhang Guxing intervened by revealing that he suffered from social anxiety, leaving Hanju speechless. Next, Zhang Guxing asked why the Heavenly Court hadn't invited Hanju to the peach banquet. He sighed, replying that he feared trouble and was lazy to go, he'd rather cultivate at home. Right at that moment, the statue-like Zhujian suddenly spoke up, praising that it was a wise choice, asserting that Jian Xundi of the Divine Palace would be the center of attention and no one from the Heavenly Court could defeat him. In response to that attitude, Hanju leaned into Zhang Guxing and whispered, asking if all Divine Palace members liked to show off, and that Zhujian didn't look like he had social anxiety. The old man shrugged and said he'd get used to it. Not far away, Zhujian overheard this and interjected, looking at the two with fiery red eyes, saying it was the first time he had seen an elder act this way. Hanju and Zhang Guxing still huddled in a corner, chatting. Zhang Guxing nudged him and boasted about his recipe for preserved egg and lean pork congee using a microwave, costing only 3.5 copper coins, making Hanju skeptical but promising to try it later. Seeing their intimacy, Zhujian wondered why the elder valued someone from the opposing faction so much. Afterward, he didn't linger but clasped his hands in farewell, and before leaving, he asked him to convey his regards to the little old emperor. After Zhujian departed, Hanju deduced from the message that Zhang Guxing's former status in the Divine Palace was very high. Zhang Guxing turned around and excused the young Divine Palace member, saying they cultivated all year round and weren't good at socializing, advising Hanju not to mind it. Hanju chuckled, saying the old brother knew his personality well. Zhang Guxing laughed heartily and asked about the main reason for Hanju's visit, as he normally never came to the River of Sword Dao without a reason. Hanju flattered him a bit, then asked about the Heavenly Dao Talisman and the Myriad Worlds ranking. He wanted to know under what circumstances the mortal realm's ranking would drastically increase. Zhang Guxing mused simply, replying that this situation usually occurred when a heavenly talent rose, or when the realm was favored by an immortal god, or an ancient powerhouse emerged from seclusion. Hanju pressed further, asking about the possibility of an immortal god or Buddha manipulating the situation, which made the old man suspect something happened in the Crimson Cloud realm. Hanju denied it, saying he was just panicking because the ranking was rising so fast. Zhang Guxing reassured him that mortal realms under the Heavenly Court's jurisdiction were rarely targeted. Moreover, the value of the entire mortal realm combined was not even equal to a single immortal. Despite this, Hanju stubbornly asked if anyone might want to interfere with him, leaving the old man speechless. Seeing this, he quickly changed the subject, asking about the relationship between the Heavenly Emperor and the Grand Divine General. Suspecting trouble between them, Zhang Guxing was startled and asked how he knew this information. While Hanju was under intense pressure with these shocking secrets, in another development, Santo Jiao was equally tense, wanting to start a fight. However, everyone quickly rushed over to stop him from transforming and told him to focus on playing cards. This was a clear sign of Santo Jiao's anger, and the reason was none other than having lost 137 consecutive games. This is the end of the video. Catch the next chapters on the Kappa-sama YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe to support me. Thank you all very much.